Hello, welcome. Let's start with the development of the SAP Build App application for SAP Business One. We're building a delivery app today, so let's get started. So to get started, first we will go to the integrations menu and select here under the classic data entries or entities. We select now the OData integration and we will choose the username. We do manager add in capital SBO demo US. This is the typical pattern. Username add database name in capital, and then the password and the service layer address, which I will now paste from my demo environment. And I click on verify URL. And now, as we want to build a delivery map application, we will look for deliveries. And we can find here the delivery nodes object in the service layer. So we will toggle this on and save the data resources, right? So as the next step, we will go to the user interface and start building the application. So as you can see here, there's some kind of a template. So we already have a headline. So just click twice on it and let's put in here deliveries of today. And the second text field we can delete, remove. We don't need this. So as we want to deal with maps or show a map for the delivery application, we need to install a map component. It's not part of the default components of Build Apps, but there is this marketplace, and we can now look for the word map. And in here we can then see, for example, the embedded map view, which we will install as an additional component for SAP Build Apps, and we can then also drag this already to the right side to have it included in our canvas. And we will need to go back to the marketplace and install a second map component to translate addresses of our deliveries into world coordinates and longitude and latitudes. And therefore we use the Google Maps Geocoding component and install it as well. Right. So by installing this Google Maps Geocoding component, actually this is the integration. So if we go back to the integrations, we can see next to our delivery nodes now also to Google Maps Geocoding. And if I click in here, you can see that there's one key which has not yet a value. So what I need to provide here actually is a key for Google Maps API. If you have an account with Google or Google Cloud Platform, you can then obtain such a key with some free, let's say, usage to a certain amount. And yeah, I just paste my key here and you can easily get your own key. So let's save data entity and let's continue by maybe saving now and going back to the user interface. So in the user interface, you can see now the canvas with the headline and the map. And if you click somewhere where there's no component, maybe above here on the gray border, you can now see that in the bottom right corner, the logic changes to homepage, right? So if I click here, this is the logic to the title, this is the logic to the map view. But if I click on top on the right gray corner or gray bar, gray border, whatever, then you can see that there's no add logic to the homepage, which I will click on. And we can now define what will happen if the app gets loaded, the page gets loaded or mounted, right? So what we will do now here is on the left side, we will now choose a new element, and this is a get record collection. So we need to get data when the page is loaded. And yeah, what we will do now is we will define if we click on this box on the right side, we can see that the data is already coming from the delivery nodes integration. That's great. But we need to add a basic authentication. By hardwiring here the authentication, like also before, you need to understand that the credentials will be removed later when this will become a SAP Business One application or extension. Then this information will be removed again. All right, so let's continue and enter the credentials. Okay, let's save. So what's next? Okay, so we have now entered here the basic authentication. So next we go to filter condition, and in filter condition we will now go to object with properties and add a condition. And as we want to deal with the deliveries of today, so we need to select the property or the data of the delivery date, which is in SAP Business One in the delivery the field doc due date. Yeah, so you can also find this here in this list. Just scroll here. And as the date has a long format, you can see it's the year, then there's a dash, the month, a dash, a day, then there's a T, and then there's even a timestamp. So we will not get the exact equal value of this timestamp with day. But what we want to do is that we want to say, okay, at least it contains partially the date of today. And we're doing this by clicking here now on the ABC button, and we will not hard code now a date. We will use the formula editor to define a value. So let's keep this blank, the formula. And if we go down, there is a date function, and in the date function there is a now function, right? And the now function can give us the day of today, yeah. And what we need to do is actually then to use this kind of format. So we will write now, open a bracket, do a quote, and then we need to provide the year pattern, a dash, then the months, 2 times the M, and then the days, right? So 2Ds and quotes and closing the brackets. So you can already see then here an example result of this, right? So let's now save this. So we want to only get data where the delivery date is today. So let's save this. So next what we will do is, and this is also very important if you deal with get record collections and OData, is that we will also need to define the paging, right? So if we go down, there is a paging. As you need to know that in OData there is various limitations. You will never get a full list of all records. If you ask to display all records, there's always a paging involved. So you will get the first 20, then the next 20, then the next 20, like in steps, yeah, so in pages. But what the paging also provides is a total count of records, yeah. And this is what we're at the moment looking at. So what we will need later for our retrieval of data is that we need to know how much data we need to retrieve from for the map, right? How many pins we need to create. So therefore, we go to the get record collection, select include total count, and then we select here static true or false, and then make this true. So actually we want to include then the total count. So let's save this. Okay. And next thing what we need to do is to go ahead and go to the variables section and create a few variables. So there are different kind of variables. So for the whole app, for this page, for the home page, or there are even parameters if you jump from one page to the next one and you want to pass over some data. And at the end, there are data variables where you can then also, for the page without a logic even, get data from the deliveries. But we defined already here to get the data in the logic and not in the UI. So what we need to do now is we will need to add a page variable, which is then available on this page only, right? And there we will create actually two variables. One is called geo, yeah, will become relevant later for storing the coordinates for the business partners or for the deliveries, right? And this will become a list. It's at the bottom almost. And the list type actually is not a single simple type. It will be a collection of types. We will have an address, we will have a longitude, a latitude, we will have a customer name. So we will collect various types. So we will select the complex type object, right? So this is something which is maybe not very intuitive to you, but this is how we will actually build this up. And if you do this a few times in future projects, you will remember this easily and also learn how to use this kind of type. Yeah. And we will go through this together, right? So we will now add some properties. So we will add a address property, and we will continue with further properties. So one will be a customer name, and another one will be LAT and LONG, right? And you can see address, capital A, customer name, capital C and N, and then let and long is small. I mean, if you want to follow the exercise, I would recommend you to keep it in the same format. One more thing, the ID field or property was already created by default. We can remove this. We don't need this. And what else do we need to do? The latitude and the longitude, they are not in a text format, they are in a number format, right? So those are numbers. So just changing this quickly. And before we actually leave this variable section, we will create one more variable outside of this geo variable. And the name for this will be counter, as we need later also to count how many pins of those total records we already have, let's say, read or worked on, right? So let's have a counter, and this is also a number type. And yeah, let's save this again. So we will need to set a page variable now. And as you can see here, the get record collection has two endings. One, if you get a positive result, so there are records collected. And the lower one is if you get an error or there are no records. Yeah. So well, actually, if there's an error getting the records. Yeah. And so now we will focus on the positive side of the house. If you want to catch also an error, there are other ways, like here with the toast message. Yeah, you can paste the toast message also here, drag it here, and then you can then catch the error message. Yeah, and then say, okay, this error is then you will receive it. Yeah, exactly. So save. So if we will get an error message, you can then receive this in here. And now let's focus on the set page variable. So the counter already has been chosen, which is great, but we will now assign a value to the counter. So how many records will the counter display? It will display actually the total count. Yeah. So we will say get record collection total count and save this. Okay. Okay. Right. This is it. So let's continue. And now we will start with a loop, right? So we want to create as many pins on the map as many data records we have in the counter, right? So we will start with the if loop, yeah. So our condition, you can find this on the bottom. There is the if condition. Just drag this here, and let's connect it. Scroll a bit to the right. Okay, and let's click on the if condition. So we will start the loop under the following condition. So we will click here on this toggle switches, and we will define a formula which will help us to decide if we are still in the loop of reading data and creating pins on a map, or if not, right? So, and therefore we will then select here from the page variables our counter, just click twice on it, and we will still, let's say, go from one iteration to the next iteration if our counter is greater than zero, right? So as long as we have records in our counter, we will continue with our loop to get data. All right, and okay, so if we are in the loop, what will we do then? So we will get data. So we'll have a get record collection only if the counter is greater than 0. If not, you can define a different logic, but we don't define a logic now for that one. And this time we will not use the delivery nodes. No, this time we will use our Google Maps geocoding and click on save. Okay. As we want to retrieve our world coordinates, the longitude and latitude out of a Business One address. Okay, to get started, we need this data up front. And as you can see, this integration of Google Maps geocoding needs either a latitude or longitude or an address. So what we can deliver out of Business One, of course, is the address, the delivery address. So we go to Formula, and in this formula editor, what we can do is we can see on the left side output of another node, and then we can see address and address to. So address to is reflecting the shipping address of a delivery node, so we click twice on it. However, it shows on records with the index 0. So if you have dealt with, like in programming or even in some maybe university courses or wherever you learned about IT, if you collect data in a variable in programming languages, typically those start with the index 0. So the first index has the index 0, right? However, what we want to do is we want to dynamically collect data from all the records. So not just a fixed position. So we don't just want to have the very first delivery address, let's say red at this logic. We want to have at this position the number of our counter red, right? So if our counter has, let's say, red 5 objects, we want to read the number 5. And in the next iteration, we want to read the number 4, and then we want to read the number 3, 2, and 1. And then after we have read the last record, we will not go in this loop anymore. Okay, this is like a bit like advanced programming knowledge, but actually for those programmers or developers seeing this now, it's not so much advanced, right? So what we will do now is instead of using this 0 here, what we will do is we will actually put in here data variable, no, sorry, a page variable, and we will use our counter. Okay. However, the counter, for example, has 5 records. But if you want to see the record number 5, as we start from 0, the record number 5 will be not 5. Even we have counted 5 records, the right index of the 5th delivery is number 4, right? Because we start from 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are in total 5 records. So to deal with this logic here, we will add a -1, okay? So that it will actually look at the index number 4, which then will be the 5th record starting from 0, right? I hope you you can understand this logic. It's a bit tricky, but this is how it is in the IT or informatics, right? That you always start with 0 while we count with our hands from 1, starting with 1, right? Okay, so let's save this and proceed. So now as we give the Google Maps geo coding the address to convert it in latitude and longitude, let's go next, and now let's pass those variables over to our own created geo list into the latitude and longitude, right? And to do this, we will then select here on the left side a set page variable logic box and connect it with the upper part, right? So if the geocoding was successful, converting the address and coordinates. And in here, we will need to change the variable name from counter to geo. And now we have here a custom list, right? So let's click here and click on add value. And now you can see our structure also from what was in the background, the list of objects, and you can see our 4 properties, right? What we now can easily do is we can start from top to bottom, so the address, go to formula, and then select here in the formula editor, we can delete the quotes, and we can then select on the left side again the output from another node. And this time we are not looking for the address. We are looking, and you can use the little search bar here, the card name. And we will then select here just check which field we are working on. The address. Okay, we're working for the address. And again, we can then look here for the address too. And again, we will need not just always to look at the first address. We will look of the same address in this loop, maybe number 5, and next time it's address number 4. So we will go as many times as required through this loop. And we will now also here use the same logic. We will then use the page variable counter here, and we'll use the counter -1, right? So, and save this without the quotes in the beginning. Same with the customer name. So here we will look for outputs of another node, and then here card name, and select the card name. Again, we need to be flexible here. So we will select the counter -1. So the latitude and longitude, this is also needs a formula. And here actually it's also output from another node. But here it's not the collection number 2, it's a collection without numbering. And there you can see there's records. And in records you can then see, if you scroll down a bit, the geometry. So let's just click here and then add the geometry, the location, and then we have latitude and longitude. So we separate this with the dots, the geometry. Then after geometry we will go into location, and then dot we have latitude and longitude, right? So again, if I cut off this, you can see lat and lng. Okay. This time we keep the 0 because we give every iteration, we give the correct address record to this integration of of this Google Geo integration, and this integration of Google Maps will then in every iteration replace the latitude and longitude being converted at the index 0, right? So we will not create multiple indexes in this integration. It will always override them. So that we will keep the 0 here, yeah. And we can copy this whole thing and save it. And for the longitude, we can just paste this all again and just change the last 2 letters to LNG. Right. So to explain it again, in the Google Maps geocoding, we will always give the latest address, but we will not create new records. It will always stay in the index 0, and every iteration, every time we go through the loop, we will write a new latitude and longitude at the position 0, but we don't store it in this Google Maps geocoding. Yeah? So then we're almost done here. So after we have defined all of those 4, let's say, assigned values here in the geo list, there is one more thing necessary. As if we go in again, yeah, this is still will be overwritten every time we go again into geo. It will be in a similar way overwritten as here in the Google Maps geocoding. But we will need to not overwrite the index 0 every time we go back to this geo variable. We want the geo variable to create multiple indexes, right? So from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 or whatever. So to do this, what we will do is we will go here back, and the list of values is still blue, which means we have a list of values. But if we go back, we can convert this into a formula by clicking on formula. So now you can see that everything what we have done in this easy UI way or forms has now been translated into a long formula. And there is now a command which allows you to create multiple indexes for variables in SAP Build Apps. And this is a bit advanced. We can consider this already as low code. And this command is called union. So we just write union in the beginning, open a bracket, and now we need to define where we want to create those indexes, where we want to collect all of these fields. And here we will then select our page variable geo, and we don't give a specific index. So we will start creating the indexes with the union command, and we will separate this with a comma. Okay, so without the comma, this is the first list. You can see it in the small little text here. So the first list is our geo list, and with a comma, we will then merge into it the second list, which is then a construct of address, customer name, latitude, longitude. We will end this with a bracket, closing bracket. And that's all of the magic. So we will collect address, customer name, latitude, longitude as many times as required and put them in the geo list. Yeah. And save this. All right. And yeah, to close the loop, actually, to come back to the if condition, we will do one more thing. We will do another set page variable, and we put it this time maybe somewhere here in the middle. So if we then set our geo list with let's say a set of records, address, customer name, latitude and longitude of a specific delivery node, so let's say delivery node number 5, we need now to reduce our counter by using a formula, and then we will use the page variable counter, and we will reduce the counter now by -1, okay? Because in the next loop, we will look not anymore at delivery node number 5, we will now look at delivery node number 4. And then if we have stored another value in the geo list, we will then reduce it to number 3, and then we will look for delivery number 3. This is a bit how loops work. And when we reduce the number, we will start all the way again to check if our counter is still greater than 0. Yeah. So this is it from a logic standpoint. So let's save this and go to the user interface. So you can see now here is the map. And what we will do is the map has, of course, also then some parameters. Where do I put my pins, my markers, right? So I need a latitude, I need a longitude, and so on and so forth. But yeah, so okay, but as we don't want to, let's say, add just one single marker, we want to set multiple markers. We go back and click on list of values, or we can directly also click here on this little bracket symbol. And then what we will define is a mapping actually. Yeah. So we will go here to mapping, and we will define the source for the mapping. And the source for the mapping is coming from the data and variables, and then it's coming from the page variable geo. Yeah. And from here, now we can easily drag and drop our fields to the required properties of the map view. And we can also use a field multiple times. So for example, the callout description, I will use the address of the delivery. Then for the callout title, which is like a small header, it's the customer name of our marker. The label of our marker will be again the customer name. And yeah, if we go further down, you can then also see latitude, longitude. So latitude, and long is for longitude. And that's it. So now we have successfully mapped this. And there's one last thing we need to do with the initial map region. So where to zoom in on the world map to get started with the map view. And here we use coordinates from Barcelona. Yeah. So I have them noted down. And the latitude is then 41.4. and the longitude is 2.17. Okay, so let's save this. Wait, and one more thing, and the zoom level is, this is latitude delta, longitude delta. You can look those up in Google, how to calculate them properly. I will use a one here as a fixed, let's say, zoom out, and save it. And finally, there's one more thing I recommend you is also in terms of layout. So we want to have a big map displayed when displaying this app. So we go to layout, and then in the layout section, what you can see here is the width and height, let's say section. And within this section, you can go to advanced, and we can then set here a minimum height, right? And I will select the pixel PX tab and enter 1000 pixels as I have a big screen. You can of course do this dynamically with percentage and so on. But for this exercise, let's make it 1000 for you. And that's it. So let's now preview, open web preview, and then run the application. And you can see now, if I zoom in a bit, that all our 5 point of interest have been found on the map. Okay, so this concludes the exercise of creating the application. What we can do in the next step, of course, as we are satisfied with the result, we can actually deploy the application and create the configuration. So we will select here, as this is the Build Apps free edition, we will then select the web as a target and enter a name of the configuration like deliveries, and create this. And if we go to the deliveries, we can now define a version number and just build this. And this can take easily 5 minutes or a bit more, sometimes a bit less. So let's wait a little to get this created. All right, so as we can see now, the delivery is done. So the app has been delivered. So we will now proceed here and download it. When downloaded, we will copy the file to our developer environment. So I'm now here in the developer environment. This is Visual Studio Code, and here you also can, let's say, then convert the SAP Build Apps application we just downloaded into a SAP Business One Web Client extension. So therefore, what we will do is the following. And if you don't have such environment ready, I can recommend you to go to the help portal and go. I can maybe quickly show this here. Let's go quickly in here to help SAP.com, and then we click on Business One. We click on Business One again, and then on Develop. And then here we can see in the development side, we can see the web client extensibility and how to develop web client extensions. And in this section on the left side, you can see the development environment setup. And then you can learn how to use PowerShell commands to install Visual Studio Code with all the required additional components, as well as installing the Visual Studio Code plugin using the SDK from the product package. Okay, and yeah, I already have done this. Okay, so this is it. And in here, what we will do is we go on View, Command Palette, and select the Open Template Wizard. You can also look for Wizard. If you don't have it on top, then execute it. And we will then use here the SAP Business One Wizard. Start. Select that we want to have developed a tile extension app. Next. We define an ID of the application. So for example, deliveries, and then a version 1.0.0, and the provider is SAP in my case. And this is new now. So as the module type, we will not use the URL mashup. So we will not point to a URL to a web page, we will go down, scroll down here and go to SAP Build App and click on Next. And now we can type here any name like deliveries again. And now we need to import the zip file we downloaded. So if I go to downloads, let me just paste this here. Okay, so I'm choosing this. I leave this tile number 1 as default. And now I need to select the title for this tile. It's delivery map. And maybe as a subtitle, a description of the tile, we can write something like see the delivery of today. We can expand the size of the tile to 1:2 format. The standard page is always index.html, right? So if you open up, let me just go to downloads. If you open up a file, there's always this index.html file in those zip files. We will use this also in here. And finally, as an icon, there's the icon explorer. So let's look for a map icon. And many icons displayed. So I like the simple map icon and copy the address of this map icon. And if I now go back to my Visual Studio Code, I can just replace this address. And finally, the summary. Yes, I want to package this. And this takes a while. And I need to trust the author of this application, which is me. And now on the left side, so you can see that here the project has been generated. So on the left side under MTAR archives, you can now copy the path of this packaged Business One Web Client extension. And now we will log in into the extension manager. So let's go to the web browser, go to the extension manager, log in with V1 site user. And now we import our newly packaged deliveries app. I have copied the path, so we'll open this and upload. Just maximize this here and next. And now we can jump to the next wizard to assign this to a company database. And we will keep the defaults and finish. And now if we will log in to the web client, this is a different user. So let's use the manager user. You can now see in the upper right corner the extensions tab, and inside we have now here our delivery map, and it will show here the Barcelona delivery addresses. Okay, and you can click on it and displays also the delivery address. So yeah, one more thing, if you have issues loading the map, then I strongly recommend you, and this is also covered in the help SAP.com, yeah, so I can show it to you. Again, help SAP.com, Business One, and then Business One again, develop, and web client extensibility, and extensions for the web client. You can find on the left side now the so-called tile extensions. And here you can then also find the SAP Build Apps extensions for the web client. And in the last sub-bullet, accessing the app, there are some recommendations if you have issues displaying your app that you need to add a so-called CSP, Content Security Policy. And there is some guidance, right? What you need to put in there. So I can just show you, as this app is delivering with Google Maps and with OpenStreetMap and so on. If I go here to settings and then to general settings, and if required, you can then add a more secure content security policy. Just pasted it in here, which will then include also the Google APIs. It will include the OpenStreetMap, and it also will include helpacp.com for the fonts, which are loaded from the SAP. You can see here. Yeah, and so on and so forth. So yeah, this is required for some security settings in the Chrome browsers. That's it. So I wish you great success in building this as well. Bye bye.